Oklahoma had their spring game yesterday. Remember my working premise as we talk about this with Oklahoma. My working premise with OU is this will be the best team Lincoln Riley's had. Not just offense or defense, best team overall that Lincoln Riley's had. Saturday made me feel that that theory is really on solid ground. The quarterback situation, well, let me rephrase it. The quarterback competition, there isn't one of those. There is a quarterback situation here. A lot of you did not get to see this game. It wasn't as widely broadcast as like the Alabama spring game last week. I would encourage you, go find it on YouTube and check out Spencer Rattler. That's going to be the starting quarterback for Oklahoma this fall. And he had his moments yesterday. Caleb Williams, who was the top overall quarterback in the country, early enrollee, he's already on campus. He's gone through spring now. He is good. There's a reason all those stars were next to his name. He is good. And so some people came out of the game yesterday, and I had a few people texting me, hey, man, Williams could start right now for Oklahoma. Well, he probably could start, like if he had to. Yeah, he could start for them. It'd probably be pretty good for him. The luxury is he doesn't have to. That's the situation. The situation at Oklahoma is, once again, because you're stacking talent on top of talent, you get to bring a guy in. This is what Alabama did with Bryce Young last year. You bring him in. DJ Uiagalelei at Clemson, bring him in. And, unless one of your starting quarterbacks gets COVID like Trevor Lawrence did, they don't have to start. So they can marinate in that offense and that system, the culture, get used to college life, and then you take the top-rated quarterback in the country, you have him ready to fire out of your slingshot this time next year. But here is the situation. The situation there is if you wanted to be argumentative, like one or two of my compadres wanted to be yesterday, and you wanted to say, well, shouldn't the best quarterback start? And Caleb Williams looks like the best quarterback I saw today. Well, I don't argue that he could have been the best-looking quarterback you saw yesterday, but I just want to ask you something. And this is strictly for argument's sake. There's only like the fringe 1% that would make this argument, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. How could you possibly, if you watched every play of a spring game with a microscope, how could you ever know what a quarterback is, who a quarterback is? If we all admit that we're seeing 40 to 50% of what real football is in a spring game, how could you ever know? How could you know that whether Caleb Williams is capable of getting you into the right set and shifting to protection on 3rd and 7 down in the red zone, which is going to be the difference between a free rusher coming on a blitz, knocking the ball free, scoop and score, you lose by 4, difference between going 10-2 and 11-1, difference between a random New Year's 6 rotational game and you playing for the Big 12 championship game. That's how close the margins are in this sport. So how do you know he's capable of that or not capable of that if he's put in a position in a spring game where no one's asking him to do it? And so I don't care what your arm looks like. Well, I do. I don't care what kind of window you can fit it in, even though I do. I don't care how up-tempo the offense looks and how energized people look, although I do. You're not seeing what a full quarterback's plate looks like in a spring game. So that was my argumentative take, and then I batted it down like a piñata. Imagine being Eric Gray. Eric Gray, the running back who's transferring from Tennessee, he gets to wake up every morning now in this offense. He just came from Jim Chaney's offense. He's waking up in this offense now. Heaven. It's as close to it on earth as you can get for a football player. Let me just put it that way. Eric Gray, and he's not going to have to be a bell cow or anything like that. Believe it or not, they got other talented running backs at Oklahoma. But Eric Gray, man, what a perfect situation for him. He is literally changing his future. Several zeros worth, probably, by being at Oklahoma right now. So it's good to be him. Rarely does a guy fall into a better situation. Mike Woods going from Arkansas to Oklahoma. They finally have been able to make that official. It's a really good situation for Mike Woods, too. The secondary is the biggest question on this defense. Now, I want to categorize this specifically. I'm not saying the secondary is a huge weakness. I'm saying relative to the other two levels of this defense, their secondary is the biggest question. I was listening to Lincoln Riley afterwards yesterday. Said, hey, man, we feel good about defensive line. We feel pretty good about linebacker. Secondary could go like 15 different ways. Yeah, I could. I think I know the way it's probably going to end up going is going to turn out okay for them. But they're finally at a spot now where their defensive line depth, the size and versatility, and the numbers of guys that they have on the defensive line, it's not a weakness for them anymore. It may even be a strength. Linebacker, ditto. And what I want to say is, as I move on here, exiting the spring, this is the fewest amount of questions I've ever had about a Lincoln Riley team at Oklahoma. I'm sky high on them. I think they're a bona fide national championship contender. And if you push back on that, and your main pushback is, well, everyone knows they're going to get steamrolled once they face an elite SEC team in the playoff. Everyone knows that their defense can't stop anyone. I'm telling you, if you took this defensive personnel Oklahoma has this year and you threw Florida jerseys on them or Georgia jerseys on them, you would crown them national championship contenders. Because the only thing about that team right now that has you having reservations is stuff that happened in the past. And I'm just trying to ease your concerns. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you know this. But elsewhere, if you want to buy into OU, but you're worried, you're just that stench of those defensive lapses and those horrible performances in the past are just eating at you. I don't think it's that way there anymore. But I understand. If you have to see it to believe it, I understand. I think you'll see it this year.